Ji-won Kim stood in the center of the great hall, her hands bound behind her back. The hall was massive, built from crystal that glowed with its own light. Above her, thousands of alien beings watched from floating platforms. Some had scales, others had fur, and some looked like nothing she had ever seen before. They were the Galactic Council, the rulers of known space. She had been their diplomat for 15 years. She had shaken hands, tentacles, and claws. She had learned their languages and their customs. She had brought peace between humans and a dozen different species. And now they said she was a terrorist. The accusation was simple. A Velkari colony ship had exploded 3 weeks ago. 3,000 Velkari had died. The council said Ji-won had planted the bomb. They said she wanted to start a war. But Ji-won knew the truth. She had never been near that ship. Someone else had killed those people, and now they wanted her to take the blame. Ambassador Kim, the voice echoed through the hall. It belonged to Vren, the High Chancellor. He was tall, with 4 arms and a body covered in black armor that looked like the shell of an insect. His eyes were dark and cold. "You have heard the evidence against you. What do you say?" Ji-won lifted her chin. Her voice was steady, even though her heart was racing. "I say the evidence is false. I say someone is lying. I say you know I am innocent, but you do not care." A sound rippled through the hall. It might have been laughter, it might have been anger. Ji-won could not tell. Vren raised one hand. The hall fell silent. "The council has voted. 7 races, 7 votes. The verdict is unanimous. You are guilty of mass murder. The sentence is death." Ji-won had expected this. She had known from the moment they arrested her that she would not leave this place alive. But she had hoped they would be quick. She had hoped for mercy. "The method of execution," Vren continued, "will be public vivisection. You will be taken apart piece by piece while the galaxy watches. This is the price for your crime. This is the lesson humanity must learn." The words hit Ji-won like a physical blow. Vivisection meant they would cut her open while she was still alive. They would do it slowly. They would make sure she felt every moment of pain. And they would broadcast it to every world in the galaxy. She wanted to scream. She wanted to beg. But she would not give them that satisfaction. "I am allowed one final message," she said. Her voice did not shake. "That is council law." Vren tilted his head. For a moment, Ji-won thought he would refuse. Then he gestured, and a camera drone floated down to face her. "Speak," Vren said. Ji-won looked into the camera. She knew who would be watching. Her parents back on Earth, her brother, who worked in the orbital shipyards, her sister Yuna, who served in the military, and millions of other humans scattered across their 12 colony worlds. "Mom, Dad, I love you," she said. "Tell everyone I love them. Tell them I was not afraid." She paused, choosing her next words carefully. "Tell humanity not to let them make you afraid. We are stronger than they know. We have always been stronger than they know." The camera drone pulled back. Guards came forward, 6 of them, each from a different species. They lifted Ji-won and carried her toward the center of the hall. A medical table waited there, surrounded by lights and equipment. Alien doctors stood ready, their instruments gleaming. On Earth, in a command center deep beneath the Swiss mountains, Admiral Dong-hyun Park watched the broadcast. He was 60 years old, with gray hair and a face lined by decades of service. He had fought in 3 wars before humans ever left their solar system. He had seen friends die in his arms, but nothing had prepared him for this. His aide stood beside him, a young man named Taemin. "Sir, should we cut the feed?" "No," Dong-hyun said. His voice was rough. "Everyone needs to see this. Everyone needs to understand what they are." The execution began. Ji-won screamed. She tried not to, but the pain was beyond anything she had imagined. The alien doctors worked with precision, cutting and probing, keeping her alive as long as possible. They had done this before to criminals from other worlds. They knew how to make it last. The broadcast lasted 43 minutes. When it was over, when Ji-won's screams finally stopped, the hall was silent. The council members returned to their platforms. Ren stood at the center, his forearms spread wide. "Let this be a lesson," he announced. "Humanity is young. They do not understand the rules of civilized society. Now they will learn. Any species that breaks our laws will face our justice. This is the price of order. This is the cost of peace." The broadcast ended. In the command center, Dong-Yun stared at the empty screen. His hands were shaking. Around him, officers and staff sat frozen, their faces pale with shock. "Sir," Taemin's voice was barely a whisper. "What do we do?" Dong-Yun stood slowly. He walked to the communications console and pressed a button. His face appeared on screens across Earth, on every colony world, on every human ship in space. "This is Admiral Park," he said. "I am declaring a state of emergency. All military personnel report to your stations immediately. All civilian ships return to human space. As of this moment, we are at war." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was cold with rage. "The Galactic Council has murdered our ambassador. They tortured her to death and broadcast it for entertainment. They believe this will make us afraid. They believe we will bow our heads and accept their cruelty." He leaned closer to the camera. "They are wrong. Humanity does not forgive this. Humanity does not forget this. And humanity will make them pay for every second of her suffering." The message ended, but its impact spread across human space like a shockwave. Within hours, every human government called emergency sessions. Arguments that had divided humanity for decades fell silent. Old enemies looked at each other and found they agreed on one thing. The council had gone too far. President Min-ho Choi stood before the United Earth Assembly 12 hours after Ji-won's death. He was young for a president, only 50, with sharp eyes and a voice that could fill a room without shouting. "We have a choice," he said. "We can accept what happened. We can tell ourselves that Ji-won was just one person, that war would cost millions more lives. We can be practical. We can be smart. We can bow to the council and hope they never do this again." He paused, looking at each representative in turn. "Or we can show them what humanity really is. We can show them that we do not accept tyranny. We can show them that when you murder one of us, you declare war on all of us." His voice grew harder. "I call for a vote. War or peace. Choose now." The vote took less than 5 minutes. It was unanimous. Humanity chose war. Across the galaxy, other species watched the human reaction with confusion. War seemed insane. Humanity had 12 worlds. The Council controlled thousands. Humanity had 200 warships. The Council had fleets that could blot out stars. It was not a war. It was suicide. But the humans did not seem to care about the odds. They recalled every ship, every diplomat, every citizen from Council space. They mobilized their fleets. They converted factories to produce weapons. They moved with a speed and unity that shocked the elder races. Ren watched reports of human activity and felt something he had not felt in centuries, a small thread of doubt, but he pushed it aside. Humanity would learn their lesson. They would attack, lose badly, and surrender. Then the Council would reduce them to a client state, and order would be restored. He did not understand that humanity had no intention of playing by his rules. The war was coming, and it would burn the galaxy. The news of Ji-won's execution reached every corner of human space within hours. On Mars, workers in the underground cities stopped their machines and watched the broadcast in silence. On Europa Station, miners gathering ice from the frozen moon gathered in the common halls. On the colony world of New Sol, families held each other and wept, but tears quickly turned to anger. Captain Sun-Woo Lee was 10,000 light-years from Earth when he received the message. His ship, the Magellan, was an exploration vessel, small and fast, designed to map new systems and search for habitable worlds. He had a crew of 60, scientists and engineers, people who had joined the mission to see wonders, not to fight wars. Sun-Woo was in his cabin when his first officer knocked on the door. Her name was Yoon Ji-yoon, a biologist who had discovered 3 new forms of alien life in the past year alone. She was usually smiling, always excited about the next discovery. But when Sun-Woo opened the door, her face was wet with tears. "Captain," she said, "you need to see this." They went to the bridge. The entire crew was already there, gathered around the main screen. Sunwoo did not need to ask what they were watching. He could tell from their faces. The recording of Ji-won's execution played on the screen. Sunwoo forced himself to watch all of it. When it ended, the bridge was silent except for the quiet sound of someone crying. "Orders, Captain?" his navigator asked. The young man's name was Hyun, and his hands were clenched into fists. "We go home," Sunwoo said. "Set a course for Earth, maximum speed." "That will take us 3 months," Hyun said. "Then we better not waste time," Sunwoo replied. As the Magellan turned toward home, similar scenes played out across hundreds of human ships. Traders abandoned their routes. Scientists left their research stations. Even the furthest colony ships, years away from their destinations, began the long journey back to human space. The galaxy had never seen anything like it. Humanity was pulling back, consolidating, preparing for something. On Earth, Admiral Dong-hyun worked 20 hours a day. He had served in the military for 40 years, but he had never planned for a war like this. Wars between humans had rules, traditions, limits. This was different. This was survival. His daughter, Hana Park, was a lieutenant aboard the UNS Indomitable, humanity's largest warship. It was a dreadnought, 2 kilometers long, armed with railguns that could punch through a mountain. Dong-hyun had always been proud of his daughter's service, but now the thought of her in combat made his chest tight with fear. He pushed the feeling aside. There was no room for fear now. Only action. "Admiral," his aide Taemin said, entering the office with a data pad. "We have preliminary fleet counts. 187 warships currently operational. Another 32 under construction but not yet combat ready. Total personnel just over 200,000. Dong-hyun nodded slowly. "And the Council?" "Conservative estimates put their combined military at over 5,000 ships. Personnel in the tens of millions." Taemin hesitated. "Sir, the numbers do not matter," Dong-hyun interrupted. "Wars are not won by numbers alone. They are won by will, by strategy, by the willingness to do what your enemy will not." He looked at his aide. "Contact Professor Kyung. Tell him I need to see him immediately." Professor Kyung-han arrived an hour later. He was a small man, barely 50, with thick glasses and hands that always seemed to be moving. He was humanity's leading expert in quantum physics and stellar mechanics. Before the war, he had been researching ways to extend the lifespan of dying stars, to give humanity more time to explore the galaxy. Now Dong-hyun needed him to destroy stars instead. "You asked to see me, Admiral?" Kyung said, sitting across from Dong-hyun's desk. "I need a weapon," Dong-hyun said bluntly. "Something that will make the Council afraid. Something they have never seen before." Kyung was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I have been working on a theoretical model, a device that could destabilize a star's fusion process. It would cause the star to expand rapidly, then collapse. The result would be similar to a supernova." He paused. "It would destroy everything in the system. Planets, stations, ships, everything. How long to build it?" "Admiral, I have to say, using such a weapon, how long?" Kyung's hands shook slightly. 6 months. Maybe less if we prioritize it." "Do it," Dong-hyun said. "And Kyung? Tell no one what it is. If word gets out, there will be protests. People will call us monsters. We cannot afford that right now." After Kyung left, Dong-hyun sat alone in his office. He wondered if Ji-won would have approved of what he was planning. Probably not. She had been a peacemaker, someone who believed in diplomacy and understanding. But Ji-won was dead, and diplomacy had died with her. In orbit above Earth, Hana Park walked through the corridors of the Indomitable. The ship was busy with preparations. Marines practiced boarding actions. Engineers tested weapon systems. Pilots ran combat simulations in the flight decks. Hana was a fighter pilot. She flew a small fast craft called a Raptor, designed for space superiority combat. She had been flying for 6 years and had never fired a weapon in anger. That was about to change. Her squadron leader, a woman named Bora, found her in the pilot's ready room. "Hey, Lieutenant. You okay?" "Fine," Hana said automatically. Then she shook her head. "No, not fine. Bora, we are going to war with the entire galaxy. How are we supposed to win this?" Bora sat down beside her. "We do not have to win. We just have to hurt them badly enough that they regret what they did. And then what? They kill us all?" "Maybe," Bora said. "Or maybe they decide we are too dangerous to mess with. Maybe other species see us fight and decide to join us. Maybe a lot of things. But sitting here worrying about it won't help. She stood up. Come on. We have a training run in 20 minutes. Let's go fly. President Min-ho Choi stood before the cameras 3 days after Ji-won's death. He had spent those 3 days in meetings, coordinating with every human government, every major corporation, every military branch. Now he had to address not just humanity but the galaxy itself. To the people of Earth and all human worlds, he began. We face a crisis unlike any in our history. The Galactic Council has committed an act of barbarism. They executed our ambassador without a fair trial. They tortured her to death and broadcast it for all to see. They did this to make us afraid, to make us obedient. He paused and his expression hardened. They failed. Humanity is not afraid. We are angry. We are united, and we will have justice. He leaned forward. I am announcing several actions effective immediately. All trade with Council species is suspended. All human citizens in Council territory have 48 hours to return home. Any Council ships entering human space will be turned away. If they refuse, they will be destroyed. He took a breath. To the Galactic Council I say this, you made a mistake. You believed we were weak because we are young. You believed we would accept your cruelty because we are few. You were wrong on both counts. We demand the following: a formal apology, reparations to Ambassador Kim's family, and the arrest of every Council member who voted for her execution. You have 72 hours to comply. The message ended. Across human space, people watched and felt something they had not felt in generations. Unity. Purpose. A sense that they were part of something larger than themselves. In the Council chambers on Axis Prime, Vren watched the human president's message with something close to amusement. An ultimatum? From a species barely a century into space travel? It was almost funny. Almost. The Velkari ambassador, a creature named Rask with scales like red steel, hissed in annoyance. This is an insult. We should crush them immediately. Patience, Vren said. Let them waste their 72 hours. Let them mobilize their pathetic fleet. When they attack, we will destroy them so completely that no other young species will ever dare question our authority again. But not everyone on the Council was so confident. A representative from the Thalan, a species of amphibious traders, spoke up. What if they do not attack conventionally? Humans are known for unconventional thinking. They might try something unexpected. What can they do? Vren said. They are outnumbered. They are outgunned. They are children playing at war. He waved a hand dismissively. Let them come. It will be educational. The 72 hours passed. No apology came. No reparations were offered. No Council members were arrested. Humanity's response was immediate. Admiral Dong-hyun stood on the bridge of the UNS Indomitable as the fleet prepared to jump. 187 ships, the entire combat strength of humanity, arranged in formation around him. It was not enough to conquer the Council. It was barely enough to dent their forces, but it would be enough to send a message. All ships report ready, Admiral, the communications officer said. Dong-hyun nodded. He thought of Ji-won, of her final words. We are stronger than they know. Time to prove it, all ships, he said, his voice calm and clear. Execute jump. Target Sethis 9. The fleet vanished, quantum drives tearing holes in space itself. When they emerged, the galaxy would see what humanity looked like when peaceful options were exhausted. The war had begun. Sethis 9 was a Velkari military world, home to 3 orbital stations and a garrison of 20,000 soldiers. It was also a major supply hub, where ships refueled and resupplied before heading deeper into Council space. The Velkari had held this world for 800 years. They considered it untouchable. They were wrong. The human fleet emerged from quantum space without warning. One moment, the Velkari sensors showed empty space. The next moment, 187 warships appeared in a perfect attack formation, already firing. The Velkari commander, a veteran named Orth, stared at his screens in disbelief. Where did they come from? Our sensors should have detected them hours ago. His second-in-command was frantically trying to organize a defense. Sir, they are not broadcasting challenge codes. They are not requesting parley. They are just shooting, and they were shooting everything. Humanity had studied Council warfare for 50 years. They knew the rules, the traditions, the expected behaviors. Council wars were formal affairs. with challenges and responses, orbital maneuvering and careful targeting. Civilians were always protected. Infrastructure was usually spared. Wars were fought with honor. Humanity ignored all of that. Railguns fired at near light speed, hurling tungsten rods that hit like meteors. Missiles swarmed through space in clouds so thick they blocked sensors. Human ships moved in patterns the Valkyrie had never seen, using short quantum jumps to appear behind enemy vessels before they could react. Hannah Park sat in the cockpit of her Raptor fighter, her heart racing as she led her squadron toward the nearest orbital station. Gold Squadron, stay tight. Targets are the defense platforms. Light them up. 12 fighters screamed through space, weaving between debris and defensive fire. Hannah's targeting computer locked onto a massive cannon platform. She fired, and her missiles struck true. The platform exploded in a ball of flame and metal. Gold 3, splash 1, her wingman called out. Keep moving, Hannah replied. Do not give them time to track you. Around her, the battle was chaos. Valkyrie ships tried to form defensive lines, but human vessels punched through them like they were paper. The Valkyrie had better armor, better shields, better individual ships, but humans fought like nothing they had ever seen. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Dong-hyun watched the tactical display with cold satisfaction. Focus fire on the military stations. Leave the civilian quarter alone. I want 0 civilian casualties. His weapons officer looked confused. Sir, if we are starting a war, we are not becoming them, Dong-hyun interrupted. We fight soldiers, not families. Is that clear? Yes, sir. The battle for Sethis 9 lasted 6 hours. When it was over, all 3 military stations were destroyed or captured. The Valkyrie garrison had surrendered or fled, and not a single civilian had been harmed. Commander Yuna Kim, Ji-won's younger sister, stood in the captured command center and looked at the Valkyrie prisoners. They were terrified, expecting torture or execution. Instead, human medics were treating their wounded. Soldiers were distributing food and water. The prisoners were being processed for repatriation. One of the Valkyrie, a young soldier with a burned arm, looked at Yuna in confusion. You're not going to kill us? Yuna felt a flash of anger. This soldier's people had murdered her sister, but she pushed the feeling down. No, she said. We are not you. She ordered the entire scene recorded and broadcast across the galaxy. The message was clear. Humanity would fight with overwhelming force, but they would not abandon their principles. They would show the galaxy what real civilization looked like. In the council chambers on Axis Prime, the news from Sethis 9 caused something close to panic. Friend stood at the center, his forearms trembling with rage. How? He demanded. How did a human fleet appear without warning? How did they defeat a Valkyrie garrison so easily? The military advisor, an insect-like creature named Zix, pulled up tactical data. They used a new quantum drive system. Shorter jumps, more precise. Our sensors cannot detect them until they arrive. And their tactics, he paused. They do not fight like us. They do not follow the conventions. They attacked with full force immediately, no preliminaries, no honor codes. Barbarians. Rask the Valkyrie ambassador hissed. They fight like animals. Animals who won, the Thalan representative pointed out quietly. Vren silenced them with a gesture. This changes nothing. One victory does not make a war. Mobilize the Second Fleet. I want 500 ships sent to human space. We will crush them at their homeworld and end this rebellion before it spreads. But even as he gave the order, Vren felt that thread of doubt growing stronger. The humans had done the impossible. They had struck a council world and won. Other species would hear about this. Some might get ideas. He pushed the thought away. The humans would be made an example. The council's power would be reaffirmed. Everything would return to order. Across human space, the victory at Sethis 9 was celebrated. But Admiral Dong-hyun knew it was just the beginning. He had bloodied the council's nose. Now they would come for revenge. He gathered his senior officers for a briefing. Yuna was there, along with the Indomitable's captain, a stern woman named So-min, and representatives from the other major warships. Intelligence reports indicate the Council is mobilizing a major fleet, Dong-hyun said. 500 ships, maybe more. Their target will be Earth. So-min leaned forward. Can we stop them? Not in open battle, Dong-hyun admitted. They have the numbers. But we have advantages. We are faster. We are more flexible. And we are fighting for our survival. while they are fighting for their pride. He brought up a star map. We will not meet them head-on. We will use hit-and-run tactics. We will attack their supply lines. We will make them afraid to venture into deep space. Guerrilla warfare, Yuna said. Exactly. And while we do that, we fortify Earth. Every defensive platform we can build. Every minefield we can lay. When the Council fleet finally reaches Sol, we will make them pay for every kilometer. Over the next 3 months, human raiders struck across Council space. Small, fast ships appeared without warning, destroyed supply depots and shipyards, then vanished before reinforcements could arrive. Captain Sunwoo Lee and the Magellan, now armed with missiles and railguns, used their detailed survey maps to find routes through unexplored space, allowing human forces to bypass Council sensors entirely. One raid targeted a Velkari fuel depot near the Kresh Nebula. Another destroyed a shipyard that had been building Council vessels for 6 centuries. A third hit a communications hub, cutting off an entire sector from Central Command. The Council forces were powerful, but they were spread across thousands of systems. They had never needed to defend everything before. Now they tried and found it impossible. The humans were everywhere and nowhere, striking and fading like ghosts. On Earth, Professor Kyung completed his terrible weapon. He brought the plans to Admiral Dongyun with shaking hands. The device was small, barely 2 meters across, but its effects would be catastrophic. It works? Dongyun asked. In simulations, yes, Kyung said quietly. Admiral, if we use this, we will kill billions. An entire star system will die. We will be monsters. Dongyun looked at the plans for a long moment. He thought of Jiwon, screaming as alien doctors cut her apart. He thought of his daughter, preparing to fight against impossible odds. He thought of every human child who might never grow up if humanity lost this war. Build it, he said. Build 12 of them, and pray we never have to use them. The Council fleet finally arrived at Seoul after 4 months of preparation. It was the largest military force assembled in 1,000 years. 500 warships, each one a masterpiece of engineering and firepower. They expected to find Earth defended by perhaps 50 human ships. Instead, they found 300. Every human vessel had returned home. Traders became warships. Exploration ships were armed with weapons. Even colony ships mounted railguns. And Earth itself bristled with weapons platforms, thousands of them, each one capable of destroying a cruiser. Admiral Dongyun stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the Council fleet approach. Beside him, his daughter Hana was preparing her fighter squadron for launch. He wanted to tell her to be careful, to survive, to come back to him. But he knew she would not appreciate it. She was a warrior now, just like him. All ships, this is Admiral Park, he broadcast. Today we fight for our home. We fight for our families. We fight for every human who will ever look up at the stars. The Council expects us to surrender. They expect us to beg for mercy. He paused. Show them what humanity does to tyrants. The Council fleet advanced. Their commander, an elder named Thros, sent a message. Humans, you have fought bravely, but this ends now. Surrender your fleet and we will be merciful. Continue to resist and we will destroy everything you have built. Dongyun's response was brief. Come and take it. The Battle of Earth began. For 6 days, the two fleets tore each other apart. The Council ships were stronger, but human vessels were faster and more maneuverable. Hana Park became a legend in the first hour, leading her squadron in a suicidal attack on the Council flagship, crippling its main engines and killing Admiral Thros. Human casualties mounted. Ships were destroyed. Thousands died. But the Council forces suffered too. Human weapons were crude but effective. A railgun did not care how thick your armor was if it hit fast enough. The victory at Earth changed everything. Across the galaxy, species that had never questioned the Council's authority began to whisper, if humanity could defeat a Council fleet, what else was possible? How much of the Council's power was real and how much was just fear? But victory came with a cost. Earth's orbital stations were shattered ruins. Debris filled the space around humanity's homeworld. Hospitals overflowed with wounded. And in the quiet moments when the celebrations ended, humans counted their dead and wondered how long they could keep fighting. Admiral Donghyun stood in a cemetery on Earth, watching as they buried the fallen. 20,000 names carved into stone, 20,000 families broken. His daughter Hana stood beside him, her uniform still scorched from battle. She had survived, but 30 pilots from her squadron had not. How many more? Hana asked quietly. Dongyun did not answer. He did not know. But he knew the council would come again with more ships, more soldiers, more weapons. And next time, humanity might not be so lucky. He returned to his office and found a message waiting. It was from Captain Sunwoo Lee, still deep in council space aboard the Magellan. The exploration ship had been conducting raids, hitting targets far behind enemy lines. But Sunwoo's message was not about a raid. "Admiral," Sunwoo's recorded image said, "we have made contact with a species called the Thalan. They are traitors, amphibious beings who have been part of the council for 3,000 years. But they are not happy. They say the council has been exploiting them, taking their wealth and giving nothing back. They want to help us secretly. They can provide intelligence, supplies, maybe more. I recommend we accept." Dongyun felt a spark of hope. An ally, even a secret one. It could make all the difference. He sent a coded reply. "Proceed. Make no promises we cannot keep. Trust no one completely, but use every advantage they give us." The council, meanwhile, was fracturing. The defeat at Earth had shaken the elder races. Some called for total war, the complete destruction of humanity as a lesson to other young species. Others urged caution, arguing that escalation would only make things worse. High Chancellor Vren silenced them all. "Humanity must be crushed," he declared. "Not just defeated, but eliminated as a threat. We will use every weapon at our disposal." And he meant it. Within weeks, council scientists began deploying weapons they had never used before. Biological agents designed to target human DNA. Nanomachine swarms that could disassemble ships at the molecular level. Weapons so terrible that they had been banned by council law for millennia. The first bioweapon hit the colony world of New Busan. It was a virus, engineered to attack human nerve tissue. It spread quickly, killing 30,000 people in 3 days before human doctors could develop a cure. The survivors were left with permanent damage, shaking hands and blurred vision. When news of the attack reached Earth, rage swept through humanity. They had tried to fight honorably, to show the galaxy they were civilized, and the council responded with biological warfare. Admiral Dongyun called an emergency meeting. His senior staff gathered in the war room, their faces grim. Professor Kyung was there, along with Yuna, Soman, and representatives from every branch of the military. "They have crossed a line," Dongyun said. "They are using weapons that target civilians, weapons that cause slow, painful death. If we do not respond, they will keep using them until we are all dead." "What are you proposing?" Yuna asked, though she already knew. Dongyun brought up a star map. A red dot marked a system deep in Velkari space. Threxus, a Velkari colony system with 7 billion inhabitants, 2 habitable planets, dozens of stations. It is also a major industrial center producing ships and weapons for the council. He pressed a button and Professor Kyung's star-killer weapon appeared on the screen. "No," Yuna said immediately. "Admiral, that would be genocide. 7 billion people, most of them civilians. They killed 30,000 of ours," someone said. "All civilians. So we become them?" Yuna shot back. "We murder billions to avenge thousands? That makes us monsters." Dongyun looked at her with tired eyes. "Yuna, we are already monsters. We became monsters the moment they killed your sister and we chose war. Now the only question is whether we are monsters who survive or monsters who die for our principles." The room fell silent. Finally, Yuna spoke again, her voice shaking. "If we do this, we lose what makes us human. We lose what we are fighting for." "No," Dongyun said. "We are fighting to survive. Everything else is secondary." He looked around the room. "Vote, do we use the weapon or not?" The vote was 8-3 in favor. Yuna was one of the 3 who voted, numbered 2 weeks later. A human stealth ship entered the Threxus system. It was small, barely bigger than a shuttle designed to be invisible to sensors. It carried one weapon, Professor Kyung's Star Killer. The ship approached the system's sun, a stable yellow star that had burned for 4 billion years. The weapon deployed, a small device that seemed harmless, but it carried a quantum trigger that would disrupt the star's fusion process. The pilot, a young man named Jinho, armed the weapon with shaking hands. He thought about the 7 billion Velkari who would die. He thought about the 30,000 humans already dead from bioweapons. He thought about his sister who had been on New Busan when the virus hit. He pressed the button. The weapon activated. Deep in the star's core, fusion reactions began to destabilize. It would take hours for the effect to become visible. The pilot's ship jumped away, back to human space. 6 hours later, the star began to expand. Rapidly, violently. The Velkari on the planets below saw their sun grow larger and redder. They did not understand what was happening until it was too late. The star swelled, its outer layers reaching out to embrace the inner planets. Threxus 3, the primary colony world, burned first. 7 billion Velkari died in minutes, vaporized by heat that could melt metal. The other planet, Threxus 5, survived a few hours longer before the expanding star reached it. Stations tried to evacuate, but there was nowhere to go. Ships fled, but most did not make it to safe distance before the star's radiation cooked them. When it was over, the Threxus system was a tomb. The star eventually stabilized, but it was now a red giant and everything within the habitable zone was dead. The galaxy watched in horror. Humanity had just destroyed an entire star system, 7 billion lives gone in a day. The Council had called humans barbarians. Now they seemed to be right. But the weapon had its intended effect. The Council's advance stopped. Their fleets pulled back, suddenly uncertain. If humanity was willing to destroy stars, what else would they do? How far would they go? Vren called for the deployment of the Council's ultimate weapon, a device that could create an artificial supernova, destroying entire sectors of space. But other Council members hesitated. If both sides used such weapons, the galaxy itself might burn. On Earth, Yuna requested a meeting with Admiral Dongyun. She found him alone in his office, staring at reports from Threxus. Casualty estimates. Damage assessments. 7 billion dead, are you satisfied? She asked coldly. Dongyun looked up. His face was haggard, years older than it had been months ago. No, I am not satisfied. I am sick, I am horrified. But I am also alive, and so are you. And so are billions of other humans who would be dead if we had not acted. We murdered 7 billion people, Yuna said. Yes. And if I could go back and choose differently, if I could save them without dooming us, I would. But I cannot. He stood up slowly. You wanted to know when we became monsters, Yuna? This is when. Right now. This moment. We just have to hope we can become human again when the war ends. And if we cannot? Dongyun had no answer for that. The war continued, but it had changed. Both sides now fought with weapons that could end civilizations. The Council deployed more bioweapons. Humanity responded with more star killers. Billions died on both sides. Entire systems were rendered uninhabitable, but something else was happening. The younger species in the Council began to rebel. The Thalan openly sided with humanity, providing ships and supplies. The Karathi, a peaceful species of herbivores, declared neutrality and refused to provide resources for the Council's war machine. Other species began to question why they were fighting to preserve a system that had exploited them for millennia. Captain Sunwoo Lee found himself becoming a diplomat again, meeting with representatives from these rebellious species. He and Dr. Yunji worked to build a coalition, promising a new galactic order where all species had equal voices. We are not fighting to replace the Council with human tyranny, Sunwoo told them. We are fighting for freedom, for the right of every species to determine their own fate. Slowly, a new alliance formed. They called themselves the Free Worlds. It started with just 3 species, but it grew. Within 6 months, a dozen species had joined. Within a year, 30. The galaxy was splitting in 2. On one side, the Council, led by the elder races who refused to give up their power. On the other, the Free Worlds, led by humanity and its allies. And between them, a war that had already killed tens of billions and showed no signs of ending. Admiral Donghyun looked at the strategic map and saw the future. The war would not be won by destroying the Council's military. It would be won by destroying the Council itself, by turning its member species against it. But first, they had to survive. The Council was preparing one final assault. 2 years had passed since Ji-won Kim's execution. 2 years of war that had reshaped the galaxy. Entire star systems lay in ruins. Billions were dead. And still, the fighting continued. But the war was no longer just between humanity and the Council. It had become something larger. The Free Worlds Alliance now included 47 species, each one tired of Council tyranny, each one willing to fight for their freedom. Together they had fleets that could match the Council's military strength. The deciding battle would take place at Axis Prime, the Council's capital. It was a symbolic target but also a practical one. If Axis Prime fell, the Council would collapse. The elder races would lose their ability to coordinate their vast empire. Admiral Dong-hyun prepared the assault with meticulous care. He had learned hard lessons over 2 years of warfare. He had become a different person, harder, colder, willing to make choices that haunted him at night. But he was also still fighting, still winning. And humanity still existed. His daughter Hana now commanded her own squadron, promoted after her heroics at Earth. She was a captain now, with a reputation that made enemy pilots afraid. But Dong-hyun could see the war had changed her too. She smiled less. She drank more. She woke up screaming sometimes. "Are you ready for this?" he asked her, the night before the assault. They stood on the observation deck of the Indomitable, looking out at the fleet. 300 human ships plus 200 more from the free worlds. It was the largest Allied force ever assembled. "No," Hana said honestly, "but I will do it anyway. That is what we do now. We do terrible things because the alternative is worse." Dong-hyun put his hand on her shoulder. "When this is over, take leave. Real leave. Go somewhere quiet and remember what peace feels like." "What if I have forgotten?" Hana asked quietly. Dong-hyun had no answer for that. The fleet departed for Axis Prime, jumping through quantum space in waves. They emerged at the edge of the system and found the Council waiting. Vren had assembled everything he had left, 600 ships, the survivors of dozens of battles. They orbited Axis Prime like a shield of steel. But Vren had a surprise. He had completed the Council's ultimate weapon, a device that could trigger a supernova. If he activated it, everyone in the system would die. Council forces, human forces, the billions of civilians on Axis Prime below. It was a doomsday weapon, something to be used only when all other options were gone. "Humans," Vren broadcast across all channels. "This ends now. Surrender your fleet or I will activate the weapon. We will all die, but the Council will survive. Other fleets will carry on our legacy, but humanity will be extinct." Admiral Dong-hyun looked at his tactical display. His analysts confirmed the weapon was real. If Vren activated it, they would have perhaps 30 minutes before the star exploded. Not enough time to evacuate. Not enough time to escape. Around him, his officers waited for orders. They expected him to call Vren's bluff to attack anyway. They had come too far to surrender now. But then Lieutenant Hana Park's voice came over the command channel. "All squadrons, I have an idea. It is insane, but it might work." Dong-hyun listened to his daughter's plan and felt pride and terror in equal measure. It was insane. It was dangerous. It might kill her and everyone with her. It was also their only chance. "Do it," he said. Hana launched with 20 fighters, the best pilots in the fleet. They did not head toward the Council ships. Instead, they dove toward Axis Prime itself, burning hard for the planet below. Council fighters pursued, but human ships intercepted, buying Hana time. The capital city of Axis Prime was a massive complex of towers and domes, home to 50 million beings from 100 different species. And somewhere in that city was Vren, controlling the doomsday weapon. Hana's squadron entered the atmosphere at full speed. Shields glowed red-hot. G-forces pressed them into their seats. Anti-aircraft fire filled the sky, but they wove through it, their advanced maneuvering systems giving them an edge. "Split up," Hana ordered. "Find that weapon. Find Vren, we have one shot at this." The fighters scattered across the city. Hana flew low over buildings, dodging fire, searching for the weapon signal. Her sensors picked up a massive energy source at the center of the government district. That had to be it. She armed all her missiles and dove. In space above, Admiral Dong-hyun watched the battle unfold. The Council fleet was moving to engage his forces. It would be a brutal fight, one humanity might not win. But if Hana succeeded, if she could disable the weapon, they had a chance. The fleets collided in a storm of fire and metal. Ships died on both sides. Thousands of lives ended in seconds. But the human forces fought with desperation, knowing everything depended on a handful of fighters on the planet below. Hana's raptor screamed over the government complex. She could see the weapon now. A massive device mounted on a tower, energy crackling around it. And standing beside it, surrounded by guards, was Vren. She fired everything she had. Missiles streaked from her fighter, slamming into the tower. Explosions ripped through the structure. Guards fired back, but Hana was already past, pulling up hard, her fighter groaning under the stress. The tower collapsed. The weapon fell, tumbling through the air, its energy field destabilizing, and Vren, the High Chancellor who had ruled the Council for 3 centuries, fell with it. Weapon is down. Ana broadcast. I repeat, weapon is down. In space, Admiral Donghyun felt a weight lift from his chest. All ships press the attack. The battle turned. Without the threat of mutual destruction, the human and free world forces fought with renewed energy. The Council fleet, demoralized by Vren's death, began to crumble. Ships surrendered. Others fled. Within hours, the battle was over. Axis Prime had fallen. Captain Sunwoo Lee landed on the planet with a delegation from the free worlds. His mission was to secure the Council chambers and establish order. What he found was chaos. Council members were fleeing, trying to escape on private ships. Staff were destroying records. The government was collapsing in real time. But not all the Council members ran. Some stayed, including the Thalan representative who had been secretly helping humanity for months. He gathered the remaining delegates in the main chamber. The Council is finished, he said, but we can build something better. Something where all voices matter, not just the elder races. Over the next weeks, representatives from every species in the galaxy gathered on Axis Prime. They debated, argued, and eventually agreed on a new system. The confederated systems would have no rulers, only representatives. Every species would have equal votes. Decisions would be made democratically. It was imperfect, messy, and would probably cause as many problems as it solved. But it was better than what came before. War crimes tribunals were established. Council members who had voted for G1's execution were arrested and put on trial. The Velkari officials who had carried out the vivisection faced justice. But they were not executed. They were sentenced to life imprisonment. Humanity chose justice over vengeance. Admiral Donghyun attended one of the trials. He testified about what he had seen, about Ji-won's death and humanity's response. When it was over, he stood outside the courthouse and found Yuna waiting for him. It is not enough, she said. Nothing will bring her back. No, Donghyun agreed. But it is something. It is a line that says we will not tolerate such cruelty. Maybe that matters, Yuna looked at him with sad eyes. We killed billions, Admiral. To stop them from killing us, we became killers ourselves. Was it worth it? Donghyun thought about all the humans still alive because of the war. He thought about the free worlds, the species liberated from Council tyranny. He thought about the confederated systems, imperfect but trying. I do not know, he said honestly. Ask me in 100 years. President Minho Choi gave a speech to the First Assembly of the Confederated Systems. He stood where Vren had once stood, but his message was different. We have survived a terrible war, he said. We have all lost people we loved. We have all done things we regret. But we are still here and we have a choice. We can repeat the mistakes of the past or we can build something new. He gestured to the assembled representatives. Look around you. 100 species, all equal, all with voices. This is what we fought for. Not human domination, but freedom for everyone. Now comes the hard part, making it work. The assembly voted to establish a monument on Earth, a memorial for Ambassador Ji-won Kim. It would stand in Geneva, where human government had been centered for centuries. Her final words would be inscribed on it, "We are stronger than they know." The dedication ceremony drew millions. Ji-won's parents were there, older now, bent by grief, but still standing. Yuna spoke on behalf of the family. Admiral Donghyun attended in civilian clothes, retired from military service. His daughter Hana stood beside him, also retired, trying to rebuild a life without war. Captain Sunwoo Lee gave the main speech. He had become humanity's representative to the confederated systems, a diplomat like Ji-won had been. Ji-won Kim died to teach the galaxy a lesson, he said, not the lesson the Council intended. They wanted to teach us fear. Instead, she taught us courage. She taught us that standing for principles is worth any cost, and we taught the galaxy that tyranny, no matter how old or powerful, cannot stand against those willing to fight for freedom. He paused, looking at the monument. But we also learned something else.